So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Mark Ghiasy, and I'm a digital trader at a major media agency.
Okay.
So I work primarily in the RTB space. So that's around programmatic trading of ad units in Australia.
Okay. And can you describe a typical day in the life of a programmatic buyer?
Yeah, so the mornings are usually around coming in and checking the spend levels of your current campaigns. So seeing what they've done in the previous 24 hours. So just keeping an eye on your pacing rates and ensuring you're not underpacing or overpacing. So just having a level of a bird's eye view around your current spends and making sure it's between 90 to about 100%. So that's ideal pace rate. Afternoons are usually around optimizations and reporting. So by optimizations, I mean going in and actually performing checks on your campaigns and tweaking variables. So variables around day part, so time of day, day of week. So perhaps Tuesdays work better than Wednesdays, and so then I would go and get rid of Wednesday from the setup. Other variables could include channels, so there's a multitude of variables you can tweak and optimize the campaign performance around those campaigns. And reporting is just reporting back to the account teams. So that's
and you're doing these optimizations manually, or is there a point at which the system can start to auto optimize based on some of these key indicators?
Yeah. So that's a good point. So some systems actually you can program, so you can write code to do these optimizations on the fly. So you would just have to automate the process. So you would just code it into the software to tell it, this is what I want you to do when a specific condition is met. So you write a rule around that, and the system can actually do that. So you don't have to do it manually, but the other systems you have to go in and do it manually. So it's just dependent on what system you've put the media buy through. So which DSP I mean. So that's the demand side platform you've elected to use. So you would be restricted to the DSP you use, I guess.
Okay. And are there specific DSPs that different agency groups are working with?
Yeah. So that's just, I think that's more around the ad tech that the agency has a strategic partnership with, and that DSP would be the preferred choice for that agency. But agencies, my agency in particular, would have multiple DSPs, as with other agencies. So the reason for that is you have a basket of options, so you're not restricted to one, and you can move your buy across DSPs. And that diversification of your risk is important, because you don't want to be exposed to one DSP only, because if something goes wrong, you don't have a plan B, I guess.
Okay. Mark, can you describe how you interact with the other members of the team?
Yeah, so I sit with the team. We all sit on the top level, so we all are quite close. We just get up off our seat and have a chat. It's very informal. Emails. If it's a big brief, or it's a communication that needs to be recorded, then obviously we'd send an email. But yeah, having chats is probably the quickest and most effective means.
Right, so you're all sitting together.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And how did you find yourself in this role?
Well, I mean, I came from a pure finance economics background. It's interesting because my friend interviewed for this role, my friend from uni, and he didn't go ahead with it because he thought I'd be a better candidate, and then he kind of referred me to my current boss, and then I went and had a chat with my current boss, and he offered me the job then and there on the spot. So
that was a good friend.
Yeah.
And you mentioned RTB, or real-time buying, a couple of minutes ago. How has RTB changed the planning and buying process?
Yeah. Good question. So, I think you have to go back to the beginning to really to see how it's changed. So obviously the old school media buying was around certainty and having a plan and going to specific publishers and networks and locking in rates and buys. So you go, I'd like to allocate X funds to you, publisher A, and I'd like to allocate Y funds to you, publisher B, and then so forth. And there was a lot of certainty around that model. That model was very risk averse, so there was no risk. And this new RTB model that's been introduced, there is inherent risk around performance, around reach, around spend, around all these different questions. So RTB has automated. Well, I mean, when I say RTB, it's more around programmatic trading, but it has opened up this whole new game where you have all these channels and all these markets that you can move your money around. So it's based on this new model of trial and error. So when I say trial and error, I say that quite loosely because if one market doesn't work, you can allocate out and into a new market. So you try one market, and if that doesn't work, you switch it to a new market. So you have this ability to move money very rapidly. And I think that's where the real time comes in, where you have that ability to optimize your budgets in and out of channels very, very quickly.
And how has RTB changed the way clients look at online advertising?
Yeah, so clients, we deal with primarily performance buys, so hard CPAs. So these are, these clients look at their CPAs, and these CPAs are firm, and we don't have branding dollars where, people come in and they give us an indicative CPA. So this is obviously a very biased point of view from a CPA perspective. So clients see this space as very, very important because they can measure everything. So when I say everything's measurable, you can quantify a conversion. You can attribute that conversion to your channel, so you can make sure your CPA is accurate. And this has opened up advertising because performance dollars used to be very the level of measurement was not there as it is now. So measurement has moved leaps and bounds, and this space has opened up measurement, and clients love that because you can measure it, you can quantify it, and then you have a hard and fast target, and everyone knows that target. Whereas in the past, that target was unquantifiable or unmeasurable.
Mm-hmm. And are you finding that most clients are designating a certain percentage of their media budgets toward programmatic or real-time buying and keeping part of it as, we talked about a minute ago, the kind of the old school traditional way of buying online media?
Yeah. So they have a test budget, like you said, and they will allocate a certain percentage of the overall budget into a test budget for this space, and they will give us a certain amount of time for us to prove the efficiency of the buy. So obviously, the thinking behind that is if we do well within that period of time with that budget, then they would upweight the budget. So clients are open to the idea of testing, but they would that test is quite small if you look at the overall budget. So it could range between 5 to 15, upwards 20% of the total budget. But that's that estimate has a large amount of the margin for error is quite large. So just depending on the client and their risk tolerance, they can move anywhere between that scale.
Yeah, and I would imagine as those tests become more valuable and they're seeing value and return out of those tests, then those percentages could inevitably start to grow, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah. So those would grow definitely based on the performance of that test.
And so we've talked about the clients. What kind of impact has RTB had on the publishers that you trade with?
Well, just on that note, a lot of the publishers in Australia are seeing the threat this is posing to their traditional sales models, and they it's kind of the decision they have to make is whether they either embrace it or they just completely disregard it. And so the publishers are thinking is, okay, so does this space cannibalize their sales channel? Then the next question they have to ask, can we monetize this space without cannibalizing our sales channel? And a lot of the publishers are trying to figure out ways to, set something up without impacting their traditional sales models. And what's happened is the big four publishers are creating an ad exchange in Australia. So this has been in the press recently where they have teamed up to create a premium ad exchange where all the inventory can be bought in a marketplace. So the whole supply-demand economics are there without cannibalizing their sales channels. So these guys have figured out a way to monetize this space.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'll be interesting to see what happens with that exchange.
Yeah, well, once that comes online, we'll see if that actually works.
Yes. Okay. And what would you say the biggest challenge is for somebody just getting into this space, and maybe some of the more common mistakes that you could advise them to avoid?
Yeah, sure. So challenges getting in. I think you have to get in for the right reasons. So you have to look at it from a bigger picture where you're going, well, I'm coming into this new space and I'm going to come in and I'm going to, you're going to make mistakes. Obviously, mistakes inevitable, but having the persistence to go, to keep going and going, mistakes are okay, and learning from those mistakes. Mm-hmm. So I think the biggest challenge is just having an old school mentality of media buying. So a lot of planners and buyers that have that mentality find that a challenge because they have to adopt to this new method of buying media. So I think that would be a big challenge because a lot of people that come through this space have that mentality. Obviously, I didn't have that, so I didn't have that challenge, but I think that's the biggest challenge personally.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the next thing I want to ask is what kind of skills or background do you need in order to have this kind of a role? And I might tend to think it would be people who are coming from this kind of from left field areas, or maybe just, this is your first job and, you can learn something like this and you don't have those old ingrained habits. Just wondering what you think the skill set is or what kinds of backgrounds probably would be the most suitable for people entering this field.
Yeah, so, it's interesting. We had a conversation about this today at work. A lot of the guys on our team are pure analytical individuals. The guys I sit with on my team, like I work with a guy who's got a pure maths background. I have a pure finance background, and my colleague that sits next to me has an economics background. So we don't have media backgrounds at all. And a lot of the people being hired are just these really left field candidates from the hard, sciences and just the analytical backgrounds, because there's a lot of data and people need to go through and analyze this data, and you need to have people who have that ability to see those trends. And more often than not, the analytical people can see the trends. But I guess to answer your question, the skills, I guess, top 3 skills, I guess, would be just having an analytical skill set. That'd be definitely up there. Number 2 is just having an ability to see the big picture, so not get ingrained in the detail. So, having that analytical mindset, but also having a bird's eye view.
To pull the insights out of all that data.
Yeah, totally. So to see those trends, you have to have a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
You have to. It's so important to have that. And probably the third one, I think, would be just having the ability to, speak to clients. I guess that's kind of the whole picture, but, having that mindset, analytical mindset, but having the ability to sell it in. So you got to talk to clients and show them what your data tells you. I guess having that is the complete package. But
and are you communicating then directly with clients, or are you going through like account managers or business directors or traditional media people, or how does that typically work?
Yeah. So the setup is depending on the client. So I myself would go straight to the client in some instances, but a majority of times I'd say it would be through account managers. So it would be relayed back to the account team, and then they would present back.
Okay. And how au fait are they with what it is that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so some people
talking 2 different languages.
Yeah. So it's kind of a bit of miscommunication, but we're getting there.
Okay.
Because it's very data heavy. So I think selling it in, having that ability to sell it in, begins with having a conversation with your audience. So with your account managers, and just starting and. There's a lot of hand-holding at the beginning, but you need to, educate them. You need to show them the benefit of this space. And like I said, it's a lot of hand-holding, but you've got to do it.
Yeah, and at the outset, I would imagine, but once it all starts working, it becomes easier as time goes on.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, Mark, this is a very interesting and obviously fast-growing space, and really appreciate you taking the time to talk about it and share a bit of your experience. So thanks.
Yeah, no worries. My pleasure.